Hi, everybody. I was trying to give everybody a chance to get started. Okay, we've reached a couple minutes after 5. Let's just start. First I'll introduce myself. My name is Vernita Moore, and I serve as a co-chair for the Delegate Assembly Task Force. And I will be here assembling or facilitating the forum. So today you will hear the authors of the resolutions present their resolutions, and we will provide time to take questions. A perk of a union is we govern ourselves, so we get to have a voice in our own processes. Resolutions are at the heart of delegate assembly. The resolution process is designed to make our union stronger and more effective. So we're gonna have some housekeeping. Before we jump into the form, we'll have a few housekeeping items. One, the form is being recorded, and we will post a link on the Delegate Assembly webpage at mape.org. We have the auto captions on. We will pause for questions after each resolution is explained. You can chat a question or raise your hand and unmute when called upon. We will screen share each of the resolutions while it is being discussed. You may find copies on the Delegate Assembly webpage on mape.org. As we prepare for DA, here are a few reminders for our delegates and alternates. An email was sent on September 12th asking you to RSVP. Hopefully everybody have. If you have not RSVP'd for DA yet and cannot find your email, please go to the mape.org and click on My Portal. On the top bar, you will log into the portal and can find DA on the event list. This helps. There is one additional budget form on the 29th at noon for one final walkthrough of the proposed budget, and that you will vote on at Delegate Assembly. Lastly, there will be a parliamentarian training to review Robert's Rule, but we are waiting to confirm the date with our new parliamentarian. So if all the authors are ready to present their resolution today, the Constitution and Rules Committee will set a formal order for DA. I will introduce the title of the resolution, and whomever is here to present the resolution can unmute themselves after the resolution is explained. So I know with our first one, meet and confer, the author asked us to delay because she needed a few moments to get in. So do we have someone who wants to do their resolution to establish requirements for regional negotiationer position? Michael,
Yeah, I can
you're
do
the
that.
author. Are you ready to present?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have Michael Purdue. He's with Deed. He's also a negotiator, our Region 5 negotiator, and he is going to go into his resolution.
Yep. My resolution is pretty simple. Basically, the core issue that I'm trying to fix with this resolution is that currently our bylaws would allow someone who fully expects not to be subject to our contract to run to negotiate that contract, which I personally find inappropriate. I think that as a negotiator, you should have skin in what you're negotiating. And so what this resolution does is pretty simple. It just establishes a requirement for regional negotiator that you cannot run if you expect to retire or leave state service before the contract is implemented that you're negotiating.
Do we have any questions for this resolution?
There is one in the chat. It says, just curious, is there any plan for how? Oh, he's not quite done yet. Writing
I
more.
think it'd be easier if I just
Okay,
unmute
go
and
for it.
ask my question.
Go for it.
I fully agree with the inclusion of the language stipulating this requirement as a resolution and as part of bylaws going forward. But I'm just curious, is there any plan for how the intent to maintain state service and thus MAPE membership will be verified amongst people who seek to get this position, or is it basically just going to be a sort of good faith operating on good faith principles sort of thing?
Right now, I set it at good faith. I mean, I would be open to an amendment, for example, saying maybe we just have to pledge that we don't intend to retire or leave state service when we run to be negotiator. That would be something I would be open to as well. I just figured we would if we just had it in the bylaws as is, I was hoping folks would be good faith. But I could understand the need for an enforcement mechanism too.
I tend to follow the trust but verify model in most things as well. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for this resolution? Well, if not, thank you, Michael, for presenting. Good luck at DA for your resolution. So, do we have anyone here who will be representing the remove local nominations and local elections committee language? Do we have anyone here who wants to speak on it?
That's actually me again.
The floor is open.
Get myself out of the way nice and quick here. So the general principle behind this is streamlining the process for elections. Oh, and thank you for bringing that up on the screen there. Streamlining the process for elections going forward. The one aspect of this is that the role of union local elections and nominations committees kind of harkens back to the era when we were still doing paper, actual printed ballot elections for these roles. But in that sense, they're kind of obsolete now because we have moved to a centralized electronic balloting process for virtually every election across the entire state for union issues. So in that sense, there's a certain amount of obsolescency that we want to obsolescency and redundancy that we want to eliminate. But also we just want to eliminate obstacles or potential obstacles for people becoming involved in the nominations and elections process, whether that is in most cases likely because a small local doesn't have the time or resources to devote to building their own committees for nominations elections. And in some cases that leads to people wanting to become involved, but because those locals' resources are stretched too thin, they don't get the right information in a timely fashion. These days, it is an official policy that pretty much every nomination can go right to the statewide nominations coordinator via email or other communication. So there's really no functional role for a local nominations or elections committee anymore. And of course, the statewide elections committee is not going anywhere either. One thing that Jackie Blogsvet, our regional president, makes sure that I point out as part of our resolution language is that out of the last open local executive team election cycle, a full 50% of open local officerial positions did not receive any nominations for people to fill those positions. And for the delegate assembly, nearly 50%, 47% of open delegate positions did not receive any nominations. So that's the other main hope behind this resolution, that by streamlining this process and eliminating possible slowdowns or even hiccups in communication, we can encourage more people to be nominated or even self-nominate if they're interested in getting involved in MAPE officerial or other leadership positions, and get them on the ballots and get them elected. Oh yeah, you scroll down there. Thank you. Because this is largely just an omission, removing language from the bylaws and the elections rule, virtually all of the amended language and the resulting language is just a matter of removing things, not necessarily rewriting them or inserting new language. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up, Michael. Any questions?
I have one. This is Cheryl and Helgert, so I'm joining by phone. Can you say a little bit more about the purpose of the nominations committee that you're proposing to eliminate, and what was it, I guess, created for, so I can better understand why we need to eliminate it?
Right. From what I understand, originally local nominations and elections committees were included in the bylaws, the election rules, and other guidance documents to recommend a structure to locals for reaching out, finding interested nominees, putting their names forward for elections, and then structuring the elections themselves. And of course, in the old prior to electronic balloting systems, online election systems, the local committees would then handle the paper ballots and the ballot counting for those local elections. That last need has gone away entirely with the era of electronic balloting and elections. And I did see even someone putting in the chat about how folks just never really, many locals, not all, but many simply never had the time to devote to actually building a nominations committee to try to organize that process. We certainly are not intending to discourage anyone from organizing activity around the search for nominees and then sort of building up to election. Locals are still free to do that however they see fit. Removing the language from the bylaws and the elections rules simply eliminates any impression that locals are expected to create these committees as part of their annual nominations and elections process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that clears things up. Thank you.
My pleasure. Somebody else posted, Liz posted, they have an election committee of one at present. I'm sure that's not terribly uncommon either. Any other questions from folks on the call? I hope we got a question. Oh, Jackie's weighing in. She says, when a local executive position goes unfilled, the local president needs to make a temporary appointment, and then MAPE is required to hold subsequent special elections. Special elections are expensive and result in more MAPE staff time and effort spent on the elections process. That's excellent point. Thank you, Jackie. We also have a question from Liz saying, so would nominations go directly to the MAPE office? Effectively, yes, they would. And I'm terrible at names and title memory. So Jackie, if you're on the call, maybe you could chime in and let us know who at least at present, who the intended recipient of nominations communications should be.
Yes, I believe a nomination goes to, and this would be posted anytime there's like a nominations period open during when prior to elections. So MAPE would communicate this, they always do, and then it's posted on our website. But nominations go to SW Elect, statewide elect at mape.org.
And I believe Sierra Plunkett watches that email address, and there may even be backup. I mean, I'm sure that there is backup if Sierra is on leave or something like that. But yes, there are staff at MAPE Central that watch that that email, and then they also, once they get a nomination, they can check to see if that candidate would accept the nomination, and then if the candidate or the nominee accepts the nomination, becomes a candidate, they also are required to read the election rules and acknowledge that they've received those election rules. So there's one of the things that this resolution, one of the goals is to make it so that all of that work doesn't have to take place the day that the nominations period ends, and all of the local nominations committees theoretically send in a batch of nominations. It can take place, that work from the MAPE Central staff can take place as the nominations come in throughout the nomination period.
Steady march rather than a mad sprint. That makes perfect sense to
Oh,
me.
you're so great with words, Galen. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Liz, for putting that question in chat. Anything else? Excellent. Going once, going twice. Well, thank you again, Jackie, for weighing in. Always appreciated, and look forward to hearing about the next resolution. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Galen.
And sorry to interrupt, but it looks like Chris Dieterman may have had a question for Michael on the First Amendment we went through. If you still have a question, feel free to ask away now.
Hi, thanks for your time. So the thing that came up to my mind was that and I'm just going to give it out there for somebody to think about, by having this amendment where somebody's not going to retire the next year, you may miss out on somebody who's been around for a while and is a really good negotiator and just wants to lead the union better than he found it, or she found it, but is also going to retire. Just a point to think about. And so my question really was, are you okay with that? And did you understand that?
Yep, I fully understand that as a negotiator, and I'm okay with that. I would say that that person should work to cultivate a negotiation, especially if they really do care about the union. They should work to cultivate a negotiator for that region who will be there either long-term or ideally for the long term, and they should join that person's contract action team, where they would be able to do all that they would want to do in terms of making MAPE a better union. Like, they would be able to do all of those things. I think it really just comes down to a matter of fairness of, would you want someone bargaining for you that isn't affected by the thing that they're bargaining? And that's the sticking point for me.
There looks to also be a comment in the chat. So also, question about experience pending retirees. I know there are also plans afoot to increase the opportunities for retirees to be active and engaged with the union, even after leaving their position. Precise details very much TBD. Vernita, are you still on? Did we lose Vernita?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry about that. Is there any more questions on this resolution, or we can move on? Well, thank you, Galen. Thank you, Jackie. Maureen, I seen you have popped in. Did you want to speak on your resolution?
Sure, now's as good a time as any.
Okay, then our next resolution is going to be reinstate the meet and confer chair committee speaker position to the executive committee. Maureen will be presenting or authoring that resolution. You can go.
All right, is it gonna pop up? Basically, the resolution is basically that, at the last delegate assembly, there was a resolution to remove the organizing council chair, the political council chair, and the meet and confer speaker. It was postponed indefinitely. After delegate assembly, at a board meeting, just the meet and confer speaker was removed, but the speaker still goes to executive committee meetings and still goes to the board meetings in an advisory capacity, and still attends everything. And the meet and confer is the only committee, the meet and confer chairs committee, that represents basically all the agencies. And we have a pretty strong role right now in the new strategic plan. And we feel as a committee that it's important that our voice, be heard. And since the other two councils are still on the executive committee, we are just asking that the meet and confer speaker be restored back to the executive committee. And the language of the resolution is just adding that. We did run it by the board governance committee, and are willing to, update any bylaws or anything that would make that more palatable to people, keeping the role narrow to, meet confer, duties and things like that. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. If you want to show the language of the resolution, it just basically says as a voting member. And then there's another spot in the bylaws where it lists who the members of the executive committee are, and it just has meet and confer speaker on there too. That's the only changes I'd be making.
This is Sherilyn Helgertz again. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to comment on this issue. It was, I believe, the speaker of the speakers was removed from like a voting role because it was the only role that was voting that wasn't elected by the membership. And the speaker of the speakers is actually elected by just the speakers, if I recall correctly. And since that hasn't changed, I don't think, why does that no longer matter?
Well, we are elected statewide by our agencies, and then we are elected by our, by our committee, just like the other two committees are elected by their committee. And we have fairly wide representation. And if that needed to change, I guess we'd have to find a way to do a statewide election. But I don't think that's the only reason we're removed.
Any more questions from this resolution?
There looks to be one in the chat from Michael. I think MNC plays a vital role, especially for agencies like DEED, where we're spread out. So it makes sense to have them have a vote. So I guess a comment, not a question, but there it is.
Okay, we have no more questions on this resolution. Thank you, Maureen.
All right, thanks.
Yes. And now we have a resolution for reimbursement limits for individual meal purchases. Is the author here today to present that?
Yes. Sorry, I'm working on my personal computer right now, so I don't have a webcam on me at the moment. But yeah, so basically, So this resolution, I wrote it because with most or a good chunk of MAPE employees working from home, there kind of has been an issue with reimbursements for like local union work. So pre-COVID, I'll just kind of use my local as an example. Like we have various local 401 Minnesota Department of Revenue. We have various like committees, et cetera, like the leadership team and activities committee, et cetera. And longstanding practice is that those who participate on those committees can have a lunch reimbursed. And usually, in pre-COVID times, in person, those were done in a group order, no issues pertaining to MAPE central rules regarding group orders. After COVID struck and after we started work from home, it was like maybe like over a little over a year afterwards, some of our members were saying, oh well, we should start doing like individual meal reimbursements, for which we started doing so thereafter. And then I was informed by so I'm the treasurer of our local, and I was I ended up having conversations with like Todd Mackey, for example, about the rules of individual meal expenses relative to like group meal expenses. And it's in one of the it's kind of tucked away in one of the rules. It's not like actually formally in like the bylaws, to my understanding. But I have it referenced in the resolution. But basically, for individual meal expenses incurred while performing union business, it's essentially follows the same rules as the state contract for state employees, performing business on behalf of the state, where there's the $9 for breakfast, $11 for lunch, $16 for dinner. And obviously for various reasons, $11 for lunch may, depending on various circumstances, may not be sufficient to cover, the various, kind of like the cost of the food, etc. Like I know COVID, in our policies and our like local spending policies, we had in our rules to at 401 once again to reimburse up to $15, plus like taxes, etc. For within like that group order per person. And but we have so basically this resolution essentially seeks to grant local unions the agency to be able to provide reimbursement that we believe is fair and equitable, and provide recompense for those who are, donating their time to participate, participating in local union activities. Now, you probably noticed there is some red text here. That's because after the first forum the other day, I actually, there was some feedback and some questions and some disagreement with regards to the wording of it. Basically, the original wording was, I kind of wrote it to say like, well, the general MAPE policy, MAPE central policy concerning meal reimbursement would be up to $20, and then in addition any like tips, taxes, fees, etc. I have since, after hearing some feedback from some members, during that first forum meeting, I since scaled it back to make it exclusive to locals, so it doesn't end up having an inadvertent impact on the MAPE wide, MAPE central budget. And there are some concerns about like, well, what could that potentially cost the MAPE as a whole? So basically, this would kind of keep the decision, keep the expenses on the local level, involving meal expenses only for local related union activities. And then also I reduced the $20 down to just $16, and also eliminate, proposing to just eliminate at least for locals, that distinction between breakfast, lunch, dinner, because it's it's not really clearly defined anyway. So anyways, yeah, so here's the kind of the three, the resolution. The first part here, the first component is for local union expenses, meal expenses, to essentially decouple it from the statewide contract, which will essentially amend the MAPE financial staff standards, which ends up being applied to locals as well, as per Todd Mackey. The second component is that individual meal expenses, we're proposing to have that set to $16, plus additional reimbursement for reasonable gratuity, fees, and taxes. And then the third part here is that, just to clarify, this is just in here just to make the point, send the point home that, if a local wants to be more restrictive, they are more than happy to do so. There's nothing in here to say that they can't be more restrictive. In fact, as I said before, pre-COVID, in our in local 401's budget policies, we set the cap at $15. And then I think the next page will kind of has the specific language that I'm proposing. So beforehand, it was a bit more complex, but I went back and rewrote it to basically say that what this is essentially saying is for the statewide business, it's nothing is actually changing. It's but for individual conducting local union business, it's essentially allowing up to $16 per the actual cost of the meal and additional reimbursement for gratuity, fees, and taxes. So I think I addressed all of for those who attended the first forum meeting, I believe I addressed most of the concerns that people had. However, if there are any further concerns or anything of that nature, I can definitely hear them now. If there are any further amendments anyone would like to see, or any questions or anything, please let me know now or later, whatever your preference. I think I see some stuff in the chat here. Let's see. What is the meal reimbursement for DA? Okay. Oh, yeah. So, so I'm not sure what it would be for what the policy is specifically for DA, because I think that'd be on the MAPE Central level, the state level. This would I scaled this back to specifically cover, basically only cover like local meal expenses, as to ameliorate the concerns regarding the MAPE budget. I know that there's a lot of concern and anxiety over the MAPE budget as of late. I'm not super involved in the statewide conversations, but just from what I've heard, it's so anyway. Sorry, I kind of rambled there, but yeah, any questions or concerns?
Ramble.
Anybody have any questions on this resolution? And DA reimbursed $25 for lunch. That's how much we do, for those that were curious.
Well, this is definitely.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, the last time it was like I was bombarded with a lot of questions, very, very I don't want to say critical, but very like concerned and very like they were good questions that made me reevaluate things, is what I'm trying to say. So so hopefully that means that the revisions that I made were good and not controversial. But if anyone does have any further concerns, please let me know. I'll put my email in the chat box here.
Well, thank you, Ronald. Well, this is what DA is for. You present your resolution and then you find out what the people say. So thank you for presenting it and good luck.
Yeah.
And then we also have, I believe, a final resolution. The author, please stand up. It's for all MAPE documents are accessible.
Yep, this is Rob Hobson.
Okay, Rob. Do you want to talk about the
Yep.
documents? And has to do with the ADA. Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yep. So what the nutshell is that there are several documents up on MAPE's website that are emailed out for meetings, statewide, local. And what this does is it requires training for MAPE staff, local presidents, basically anyone in leadership, to make their documents accessible so that people such as myself, who's blind, or other people who need to use a screen reader or have low vision, are able to access the documents just like everyone else does. So let me give you an example. So I am a steward for Region 1101. I'm also the membership secretary. And one of that responsibilities is to reach out to new members or new hires so that they become new members. And some of the documents on the toolkit are not accessible. So what is accessible? What does that mean? So what that means is that sometimes people will type up something and just make it a picture. So my screen reader will not be able to read that picture. So because of that, I'm not able to read the document, which means I can't relay the information to people. I want to know what I'm reading, or I want to know what I have before I send it to people. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So that's just one example. When I attend MAPE meetings, it's nice to have the materials in advance so that I have, or at least on that day, in electronic format so that I can keep up along with everyone else. Something else to keep in mind, and this is not a requirement, this isn't even included in the resolution, I'm just pointing this out to you guys, is that when a screen is shared on Zoom or on Teams, I cannot access that information, which is why I need to have those documents in advance, or at least before the meeting starts, so that I can go along with it or have a reference material like everyone else would. So all this resolution does is require MAPE to make it a priority to move into that direction. It asks for checkpoints within the next, like every 3 months to check the progress to make sure that MAPE is moving in that direction. I understand that there might be a cost along with that. We don't know what those costs will be. The only way to know that would be to maybe have MAPE contract somebody who can assist with the training process. It's not, from what I hear, it's not that hard. This is something that the state is required to do, which, well, I work for the state. I can tell you there are plenty of things out there that are not accessible. So MAPE this is also part of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, because everybody should be included, including myself and other people with disabilities. So that's really the nutshell of this resolution.
Well, thank you. Thank you for presenting your resolution. And I believe we have heard all of the resolutions. So are there any questions on any of the resolutions that was presented to us? Well, if there are no other questions, we will wrap up our forum. A recording will be posted on the website. If you have additional questions about a specific resolution, contact information for the authors are on each of the resolutions posted on the webpage. Thank you for taking the time to hear your fellow MAPE members' ideas for making our union stronger. Thank you again, you guys. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. You too.